with epic battles, holes in walls, and badaboos. This is AOE Leagues.
AOE Leagues. Hello and welcome, I'm Morley, the official caster for Group H of AOE Leagues Season 3. So, for those of you who don't know, AOE Leagues is a 1v1 tournament hosted by Farm Man Official, and you can find his links in the video description, so do check him out. He does have some good build order videos on his YouTube channel, and is also just a really great guy, so go and step over to his Twitch, say hello there as well. And yeah, AOE Leagues, it's kind of like a football tournament or a soccer tournament, kind of works in leagues, hence the name. But basically each player will play a game or play a set each week. The set is normally 2 games versus the same opponent. So each player will have their own home map. So for example, for myself, I have Cenotes as my home map this season, and I would play Cenotes every week, and then I'd also play the other game on my opponent's home map. And so yeah, it's not a best of 3 or best of 5 or anything like that. It's just, here's 2 games, see how you get on. If you win, you get 3 points. If you draw, you get 1 point, and if you lose, obviously you get 0. So obviously the points all add up throughout the season, and if you are top of the league by the end of the season, you do get promoted into the next league. And there's also a playoff spot for 2nd and 3rd to fight it out for promotion as well. And obviously there's 2 people who get relegated from each league as well to make up for those people. So it's a really good tournament, really fun. I really like the concept, which is kind of why I've sort of got behind it. And this is sort of like a sports program that I'm trying to look at for each week. So this particular video will include highlights of all 4 sets of Group H that were played in week 1. And there's some really good ones. So if you do want to see more of this type of format of video, do hit the like button, because it takes quite a lot of effort to make these particular types of videos. But yeah, let me know if you want to see more. And yeah, we'll just dive right in. Okay, so the first game we're going to look at today is Tomo versus the Last Bender. Tomo has Arabia as his home map, and the Last Bender has Hideout as his home map. And as you can see on the screen, we are playing on the Arabia game first. Tomo started the tournament at 1213 elo, and the Last Bender started at 1066 elo, so quite a little bit of a difference between the two actually. So we'll see how this one goes. In the Dark Age, the Last Bender was having quite a few issues with boar luring, with the first boar actually killing his first villager, and I think that was very much down to the way that he was trying to hunt it with the villagers back at the town centre, rather than just right clicking on it, which probably would have been the better option. He also had issues with the second boar, with the villager shooting the boar once, but the houses getting in the way of the boar and just causing the boar to lose aggro on the villager, so that second boar was quite grossly delayed. But despite all the difficulties, Bender opened up with a man-at-arms rush and managed to get into the blue base. For some reason, the blue player, Tomo, had a very delayed barracks, which the red player was able to delay even further. Once the men-at-arms came into the base, Tomo was able to quick wall around his villagers on the wood line, which was pretty good and certainly kept them safe. But the men-at-arms not really able to do much at this point until Bender sent some archers forward to harass the wood line. That forced the blue player to open up the walls, and the men-at-arms were there waiting, managing to take down a couple of villagers and start getting a little bit of an advantage in game 1. But eventually the men-at-arms were quite easily dealt with by a few defensive archers. Not much else happened for about 10 or 11 minutes, both players just getting a big army together, with blue having the advantage in numbers. Red brought his forward and started harassing the woodline of the blue player, but blue sent his army forward as well, where there was still some more troops. But Bender, he had very much of a split army, which blue was able to take advantage of, pretty much clearing up the first lot of defenders, until eventually the attacking army of red managed to join up and help in the defense. But the big problem for the Last Bender was the fact that he didn't have elite skirmisher, and I think that the engagement probably would have gone better had he had the elite skirmisher upgrade. And once the army was cleared up, that pretty much meant that the blue player had free reign across the enemy economy, being able to pick off lots and lots of villagers. And there's only one thing that the Last Bender could do at this point, and that was to call the GG. Okay, so heading into game 2, we're now on the last bender's home map, which is Hideout. Hopefully the last bender wasn't too disappointed after the first game and is perhaps a little bit more comfortable on Hideout. Let's see how this one goes. At the start of the game, the last bender decided to go for a man-at-arms rush, but didn't really achieve much because Blue was able to just wall up behind it. Meanwhile, Blue went for a fast castle into Knights. However, it was only with one stable, which didn't really help him out when he was trying to break through the enemy walls. I think if it had gone for a double stable, he would have got through there much quicker and the red player wouldn't have been able to wall up behind it. As it turned out, Tomo was going for some sort of Huang inspired rush, but had rams instead of mangonels. He managed to get through into the enemy base. He didn't really get far with it, with the red having his own knights pumping out from double stables and was able to defend. A little while later, Blue managed to get quite a big mass of rams together whilst also trying to drop a castle of his own, but the red player was able to deny the castle, killing the villagers. The rams attacked the castle supported by the knights, but the red knights just able to get on top of those and destroy all of the rams and take out most of the knights. A little while later, the last bender brought his knights round to the blue economy, managed to punch through the walls and go on quite an impressive raid, taking down lots and lots of villagers in the process. And the raid's really happening now with Blue going forward and taking a little bit of a raid on one of the town centres from the red player, but didn't really achieve too much. Meanwhile, the red went on a second raid into the blue economy. As you can see, lots of idle eco, quite a few dead villagers, but Blue managing to get back with his own army and chase them off. Eventually reaching the Imperial Age, both players built castles, with Blue getting the Cavalier upgrade. But already being quite a long game, it took until 55 minutes almost before the first trebuchet was built. I think this game would have ended a lot quicker had the trebuchets been made sooner. And gold starting to become an issue for both players as we start heading into a trash war. Armed with that one trebuchet, Red was able to start making a push forward, killing the castle of the blue player and setting up a castle right on the walls of the blue base. But he didn't really push much further into the blue base after that. Eventually he had to decide to go on a little bit of a raiding spree around the back of the blue economy with Hussar. But unfortunately for the red player, the blue paladin were now waiting for him and were able to clear them up. 1 hour and 20 odd minutes into the game, Blue was starting to get a foothold, having gone for skirmishes. Still not really seeing much in regards to trebuchet, with the only trebs being made earlier on. Blue decided to go for siege rams and did start to push quite well, with the skirmishes really doing the trick for him. Not quite sure why the red player never went for skirmishes himself. Probably would have been advisable to do so, because the skirmishes from Blue just managed to pick off consistently all of those red halberdier that were coming forward. I think he had the right idea by going for Hussar and trying to take out the skirmishes, but there were just too many of them and too many supporting halberdier to be able to make much of a difference. So the skirmishes really were making the difference in this game, and as the game went on and Blue pushed forward and more resources were running out, Red had to call the GG. Okay, so for game 2 we have patch 2412, who started the tournament at 1223 elo versus Fantafart, who also started at pretty much the same elo. Actually, it was only at 1221, so very evenly matched tie this one. Both players do have Arabia as their home map, so let's dive in. Both players open the game with a scout rush, with Blue getting forward first and getting a villager pick and denying walls, forcing the green player to use his scouts defensively. At the start of the Castle Age, Fantafart was able to capitalise on an overchopped woodline, taking down a handful of villagers. They were taking damage by the town centre, whilst Green was able to add his own knights and spears and brought back his scouts, forcing the blue player to retreat. Green came forward with a mixture of knights and pikemen, destroying a stable and forcing his way into the blue base. He managed to trade well against the defending blue knights, but eventually felt that he couldn't quite push forward, wary of the garrison town centre and building placements that didn't really give him an easy path into the enemy economy. Eventually, the Mongol player made a switch to camels and managed to mass quite a few together. The green army of the Frank knights and pikemen managed to chase them down and engage. Blue's army was split, however, with a handful of knights sat idle, only coming in to support the camels once it was too late, resulting in those meeting a grisly end too. A patch 2412 pushed forward with the attack, again breaking through the walls, hitting the jackpot and finding around 15 villagers building a castle, relatively unprotected. Blue recognised the danger and sent half of his economy to make sure the castle went up. A few defensive units and, more importantly, effective building placements prevented a disaster which could quite easily have ended the game. Eventually the Mongol player was able to get quite a good mass of Mangudai together and rather a large mass of camels, being able to feel a bit more confident in taking an engagement against the green player. Although there were pikemen as well as Frank knights, he did manage to get on top of the green army and pretty much wipe them out. As you can see, plenty of those Frank Cavalier going down and almost no pikemen left. Certainly doing a good job at turning the game around at this point. A little later on, the blue player decided to make a switch to Hussar and go on some deadly economy raiding, dropping down from 107 villagers down to 52, with more and more villagers going down within the space of just a couple of minutes. This really was an effective raid by the blue player, and eventually, with blue running out of resources after such heavy losses, there wasn't really much he could do other than call the GG. Okay, so game 1 was a really fun game to watch. I did actually cast this one live on the channel, and it is a featured video on the YouTube channel, so I will leave a card at the end screen for this particular game if you wanted to see the full game. Certainly game 1 was really fun, and I just really could not call which way the game was going to go. But now let's head into game 2 and see if a patch 24.12 can come back after that first defeat. At the start of game 2, blue decided to try and wall up early whilst trying to go for a men-at-arms build, but it did kind of screw the men-at-arms build up and ended up with a really late rush. Meanwhile, the green player, opening up with a scout rush, was able to bring his scouts forward before the base was fully walled. Managed to get in on the enemy economy, caused quite a bit of damage to the blue villagers, didn't quite get a villager pick with the initial rush, but certainly causing quite a few issues. The blue men-at-arms did get forward and managed to kill off the wall builder from the green player, and also kill off a couple of scouts as well in the process, but they did take quite a bit of damage, and the remaining scouts just able to chase them down. The blue player trying to be a little bit greedy perhaps and get that extra villager, but those green scouts did eventually pick off the remaining men-at-arms and the threat was averted. Shortly after that, the green player brought forward his scouts, and the blue player, being fully walled up at this point other than that hole in the wall, meant that the green player could get in with the scouts, and that was really unfortunate. Another scout came forward and added to the army. With 3 scouts raiding the enemy base now, he is able to take a couple of villagers down and cause more chaos and death and destruction in the blue economy. Blue player did have an army which was just sat idle on the hill there, rather than bring them back and killing off the scouts, but eventually the green scouts did run into the town centre and die anyway. Upon hitting the castle age, the green player came forward with some knights, trying to utilise that hole again, but the blue player managed to get there just in time and place a gate to prevent the knights from getting in. He did, however, decide to start attacking the palisade wall though, and as you can see, there is a little hole there between the wood line again. And unfortunately for blue, this meant that the knights could get in, raid the economy, take down more and more villagers, with his army still not really ever doing anything in the whole game. There's only one thing blue could do, and that was to call the GG. So Fantafart and a patch 24.12 getting a nice tie. Let's see how the next one goes. So the next game is Chocomallows versus KTK. KTK has chosen Golden Pit as their home map, and they started the tournament at 1230 ELO, and Chocomallows, with Arabia as its home map, started the tournament at 1214 ELO. Both players have a highest rating of 1300, so potentially 2 of the better players in the league. Let's see how this one goes. So the blue player, KTK, opening up with a 18 pop scout rush with the Lithuanians, which is a build order that you can find on the YouTube channel. And the orange player opening up with a man-at-arms rush. Managed to get into the enemy base before KTK could wall. Did some nice little bit of micro with the scout just to block off the villager and just allowing the men-at-arms to take that villager down. So the orange player generally had free reign to go and do what he wanted with this one. The blue scouts being very apprehensive at engaging with those men-at-arms. The men-at-arms being the stronger unit in the feudal age. So the men-at-arms came forward to the wood line, KTK tried walling them out, but it was just a little bit unfortunate, a little bit too slow in doing so, and ended up losing a villager to those men-at-arms. The scouts did come in, try and attack the men-at-arms, but all they did was take a bit of damage before even getting some hits off. Meanwhile, the blue economy, a little bit of a mess with quite a few idle villagers. Certainly what he could have done was wall up around his resources, having noticed the men-at-arms coming in when they did. Blue player decided to send his scouts forward. Choco Mallows still hadn't fully walled himself, but because he knew that the scouts were in play, he was able to preempt them coming forward and managed to wall in around his resources and prevent the scouts from actually doing anything to his economy. So Choco Mallows followed up the men-at-arms rush with archers from one range, and he brought them forward. He was just able to start harassing the villagers on the gold there. Not quite being able to take one of the villagers down, but he certainly harassed them. Meanwhile, the men-at-arms just attacking the lumber camp, not really doing anything else with them. But the blue player able to quickly put some houses down to prevent the archers coming into the base. A little later on, KTK had brought his scouts back home and decided to try and do something about those men-at-arms. He dived in there with the 5 scouts. 2 of them, or 3 of them, were on really low HP, 2 of them dying. They engaged again. They did save a villager, but again another 2 scouts went down, leaving the men-at-arms still in play. Eventually he did bring his skirmishers forward that he'd been making in the archery range to counter the archers, and he was able to kill one of the men-at-arms and then draw them back to the TC, where the town centre eventually killed them off. On the way up to the castle age, Choco Mallows had been producing archers and managed to get quite a big mass together, which is upgraded to crossbowmen. He brought them forward and started harassing the enemy gold, being able to take a villager down. He'd also added some knights and was able to bust through the enemy walls. The waiting skirmishers were there, and also a handful of knights, but there certainly wasn't enough troops from the blue player to be able to do anything about this and prevent the orange player getting into his base. This forced the blue player to quickly panic and try and rush up a siege workshop. He does lose quite a few villagers to the knights and the crossbowmen, however, but he does manage to get the siege workshop up. Eventually he made some knights and brought them forward to take out the blue knights, but with a bit of fancy micro, the orange crossbowmen are able to easily evade the mangonel shots and also take down the remaining knights from the blue player. And at this point, upon losing all of his army, there's only one thing that the blue player could really do, and that was to call it. Choco Mallows got the win on game 1 on Arabia. Let's see how he does against KTK's home map of Golden Pit. Will KTK get the win on their home map? Choco Mallows started off with a drush. He ended up taking out a villager at the berries, but apart from that it was pretty ineffective, having lost the militia to the town centre. The blue player opened up with a scout rush, and he was able to pick off a villager and even the score in terms of villager picks with some lovely blocking micro there. Upon reaching the castle age, the orange player had gone for crossbowmen, with the blue player electing for knights. He managed to try and break in and go on a raid with the knights, but a big mass of crossbowmen pushing them back. Eventually launching a raid of his own, didn't really get very far and had to retreat back where he'd already made a forward siege workshop. But quite a few knights with plenty of upgrades for the blue player now managed to come back and actually get a good surround on that big mass of crossbowmen and managed to clear them up. A little bit further on into the castle age, orange managed to get a big foothold in the middle of the map with the town centre and a castle. Defensive castle for blue, just taking advantage of the hill bonus, but could really do with pushing out into the middle of the map. 40 minutes into the game, Cavalier surround the arbalest from the orange player. Manages to whittle quite a few of them down, but ultimately having to retreat. Having not made skirmishers until about 40 minutes, the blue player finally managed to get a good mass of them together and was able to push back the orange player a little bit whilst taking down one of those castles in the middle. He had already lost both of his own castles by this point, and he was struggling to get a foothold in the game. He decided he had to change tact and decided to go for some hussar raiding, which proved to be fairly successful. It did whittle down the villager numbers from the orange player a little bit, but ultimately the lack of gold and lack of stone, lack of castles just proved to be too much, and the massive crossbowman backed up with Cavalier was able to push back the army from the blue player, killing off all the skirms, all the hussar pretty much, and going on a raid of his own. And at 1 hour and 4 minutes, The blue player called the GG, and that resulted in the score being 2-0 to Choco Mallows. So an impressive win for Choco Mallows there. We'll head in to the final game of the week, which is Brave Sir Robin versus Scooter for Life, otherwise known as Trashmaster. Brave Sir Robin chose Baltic as his home map and came into the tournament with an ELO rating of 1186. Scooter for Life, or Trashmaster, chose Volcanic Island as their home map, which is one that we don't see very often. They came into the tournament at 1246 ELOs, and with the highest ELO rating of 1305, Scooter for Life, or Trashmaster, as we're going to see in this game, probably one of the favourites for the league title. At the start of the game, both players were able to get the docks down pretty early, with the grey player being able to get a slight advantage in fishing ship numbers, but the second dock coming down first for Trashmaster, aka Scooter for Life, and this meant he was able to mass up some galleys a little bit quicker and was able to push the grey player off of the food with the fishing ships. Brave Sir Robin was able to land some good demo shots with the demo rafts, but wasn't enough to be able to kill off those remaining ships there. And over at the left hand side of the map, a little sneaky villager came forward and started making a forward base. Scooter for Life was able to force Brave Sir Robin into making a tower to protect his docks, but it still ended up with full supremacy over the water. Over on the left hand side of the map, the sneaky base is getting bigger. We've got two stables, a barracks and a blacksmith. The Brave Sir Robin scout is coming forward, and he does manage to find that little forward base, which forces him into making some walls at the front of his base to try and prevent any rushers from coming in. But once reaching the castle age, it doesn't take long for Scooter for Life to send some knights forward. Brave Sir Robin tries desperately to wall up. Does a good job here, but I think Scooter for Life probably should have been able to attack those villages with the fire ships and get through. But it's only a matter of time before siege are added and the knights can bust their way through and start raiding the enemy economy. Does manage to take out 4 villages and also attack a few archers that have been made by the grey player, before turning his attention to the tower, sniffing blood of those villagers that are inside. So he'll bring the tower down and he'll take out those villagers, and then he'll carry on raiding the base. And with more and more villagers going down, Brave Sir Robin calls the GG. Quite a fun game there with a sneaky villager. So this set is another one that was featured on the channel. Again, you'll find a link to that at the end screen should you wish to watch the full series. So we're now going to head into Volcanic Island, which is the home map for... So in game 2, Trashmaster opened up with a scout rush, and Brave Sir Robin just deciding to just play it safe, get walled up, get some spearmen out. As you can see there, he's just making some houses there that will funnel those scouts into the awaiting spearmen, but Trashmaster does notice that and he just decides not to bother pursuing that. Now the small army that Brave Sir Robin did have decided to come forward, but a combination of scouts and skirmishers easily able to fight those off and drive them away. Unable to get into the grey base, the green player was attacking the fishing ships from the grey player. Did come forward and start attacking the enemy after Brave Sir Robin had made some scouts of his own to try and fight this army back, but not really achieving much with it, and neither did the green player. During the castle age, the green player, Trashmaster, was able to get in with some knights and came forward and started raiding the gold economy of the grey player, just forcing quite a lot of idle economy, but taking down the odd villager here and there. Brave Sir Robin did start getting a bit of an army together, adding mangonels to the mix along with pikemen. But the green player, feeling quite confident in how this game was going, decided to come forward with, I think there's around 20 villagers, to put up a forward castle, nicely placed on a hill there. He then decides to really try and cement a presence down on this side of the map by building a siege workshop and adding some knights. Later on, just as Brave Sir Robin's just entered the Imperial Age, the knights do break through with the assistance of the castle. Does run into a big massive spearmen though, which are already on the way to being upgraded to halberdier, but he finds a hole in the wall to an exposed woodline where masses and masses of villagers are waiting to be killed by the oncoming knights in the attack there. But the halberdier upgrade just coming in right at the right time and easily able to clear up those knights from the green player. Not wanting to give up without a fight, the brave Sir Robin sends his army forward. The army composing of halberdier, knights and mangonels. Takes down some houses. Causes the green player to panic a little bit, but back at his base he is starting to make his own little defensive castle. But the pressure back at the green base does force him to put up a defensive castle with a few mangonel shots going in and taking down a couple of villages there. But still more and more idle economy from the green player as the mangonels are taken out by the castle. Back at the base of Brave Sir Robin, Mangonai are now out and denying that castle. A couple of knights come forward to try and chase them off, but it's not going to be enough. With the knights dying to the castle, not much more Brave Sir Robin can do other than call the GG at this point, and the score ends 2-0 to Trashmaster. Okay, so we're now going to have a little look at the league table to see where the standings are. So as you can see, Scooter for Life or Trashmaster, Tomo and Chocomallows all getting a win to start off the season. Patch 24-12 and Fantafart with a draw. Brave Sir Robin, KTK and The Last Bender just in the final 3 places of Group H. So the fixtures for week 2, we do have Scooter for Life versus The Last Bender. We have Chocomallows versus a Patch 24-12, KTK versus Tomo, and Brave Sir Robin versus Fantafart. So some quite interesting games there coming up. Certainly Chocomallows and the Patch 24-12. Certainly ones that I'm going to be looking forward to, and probably KTK versus Tomo as well. I think those ones are going to be pretty tough games for each player. So tune in for next week. We'll see how we go, and do catch the live streams of the games over on Twitch. So that's it, guys. I'll see you on the next one.